The city had been completely abandoned. A massive steel wall stretching 80 kilometers sealed off all hope for hundreds of thousands of residents trapped inside. Anyone who tried to escape faced ruthless, precise gunfire without mercy. The people left alive slowly lost their humanity. In just 27 years, they had devolved into cannibals. It all began with a devastating viral outbreak. Back in 2010, in Glasgow, a terrifying virus silently spread through the population. Those infected showed horrifying symptoms within 72 hours. Their bodies rotted away, and they developed uncontrollable violent tendencies. In just 1 week, the death toll soared past 5,000. In response to this sudden catastrophe, the government took the most extreme measures. They erected a 30-meter-tall steel wall along the city's entire border. Hundreds of machine gun towers patrolled around the clock, and not even a bird was allowed to cross. Any intruder was shot down immediately. This tight lockdown wasn't just a quarantine, it was a death sentence for the entire city. The trapped residents seemed to realize the grim fate awaiting them. They relentlessly stormed the border checkpoints day and night. One young mother, cradling her injured daughter, ran toward a helicopter preparing to evacuate. She fell to her knees, begging for mercy. After what felt like an agonizingly long few minutes, her pleas finally moved one soldier. He gave up his own evacuation spot so the little girl could escape. Before parting, the mother slipped an envelope with their home address into her daughter's hand, still clinging to the hope that one day they would be reunited. But as the massive wall was sealed shut for good, the residents inside the quarantine zone were abandoned completely. They not only had to fight the terrifying virus, but also defend themselves from desperate, violent scavengers among their own kind. The fragile threads of human civilization slowly unraveled, replaced by raw survival instincts. 27 years passed in the blink of an eye. That little girl, Ellie, had grown up to become an elite member of a special forces unit. The right eye she lost as a child was replaced with a high-tech prosthetic, enhancing her abilities on every mission she undertook. The envelope with her family's address remained an unresolved knot in Ellie's heart. She had even forgotten what her mother looked like, and every moment the towering steel wall seemed to chip away at her dwindling hope. Bill, her commanding officer who had watched Ellie grow up, quietly reassured her, telling her that one day she would see her mother again. Neither of them expected that the chance to enter the quarantine zone would actually come. During a military raid, they unexpectedly discovered a group of infected individuals exhibiting symptoms identical to the virus from 27 years ago. This shocking find threw the higher-ups into unprecedented panic. The Prime Minister summoned General Bill for a midnight meeting, held under top-secret conditions. There, Bill revealed a staggering secret. The government had never stopped monitoring the quarantine zone all these years. Even more astonishing was the discovery that tens of thousands were still alive inside the zone, having apparently adapted to the virus. This adaptation might just hold the key to solving the current viral crisis. The Prime Minister ordered Bill to send a team into the quarantine zone to find a way to develop immunity against the virus. The seasoned general immediately thought of the perfect candidate, his trusted subordinate, Ellie. Before departure, a powerful corporate tycoon gave Ellie a crucial piece of information. Inside the quarantine zone was a biologist named John, who had been studying the virus even before the steel wall was erected. If there were any antibodies inside the zone, they were very likely connected to him.
Che succede se non trovo niente?
Può non prendersi il disturbo di tornare.
3 hours later, Ellie's plane landed near the outer edge of the quarantine wall. Her teammates, all elite experts in their respective fields, had already taken their positions ahead of her. The military equipped them with the most advanced weapons and gear, including nanofiber bulletproof vests designed to resist bites from the infected. But what Ellie didn't know was that beyond the wall awaited a survival trial far more brutal than any mission she had faced before. As the armored vehicle rolled through the rusted quarantine gate, Ellie and her team held their breath. Before their eyes stretched a desolate, apocalyptic landscape, streets littered with weathered human bones, abandoned vehicles swallowed by creeping vines. The crumbling facades of buildings were sprayed with red numbers, marking the count of those who once waited for rescue. Sadly, no miracle ever came. To complete the mission quickly, Ellie decided to prioritize finding Dr. John's laboratory. The virologist traveling with her had heard of John and speculated that if he was still alive, there was only one place he would most likely be, his lab. The armored vehicle soon arrived at the city's central hospital, and Ellie led her team off the vehicle to start the search. The hallways were littered with abandoned supplies, and the silence was heavy, as if no one had been there for a very long time. Meanwhile, a soldier left behind guarding the armored vehicle noticed a weak woman nearby. Ignoring warnings from his comrades, he brought her onto the vehicle. Inside the hospital, Ellie's team was suddenly ambushed by a group of survivors. Though their equipment was crude and improvised, their fierce determination made them extremely dangerous. As the attackers kept coming in greater numbers, Ellie had no choice but to order a tactical retreat with her team. She used her radio to call for backup from the armored vehicles outside, only to discover that both vehicles were also under attack. These survivors seemed to have anticipated their arrival and were even prepared with Molotov cocktails specifically designed to take down armored vehicles. While the soldier left to guard the vehicle was fully focused on driving, the girl he had rescued quietly crept up behind him and slit his throat with a knife. In his final moments, the soldier managed to pull the pin on a grenade, taking both himself and the girl with him in a deadly explosion. The number 1 armored vehicle was completely destroyed. Inside the hospital, Ellie and her team fought their way out, suffering several casualties along the way. Eventually, they managed to escape and scrambled into the second armored vehicle waiting for them outside. But just as the vehicle pulled away from the hospital grounds, a survivor from a higher vantage point shot an arrow through the driver's neck. The vehicle lost control and flipped onto the roadside. The team hurriedly scrambled out, firing their weapons to hold back the attackers. Despite their heavy firepower, they couldn't withstand the relentless, fearless assault of the survivors. 2 team members managed to slip away in the chaos, but Ellie and the remaining comrades were forced to lay down their weapons and became prisoners of these brutal savages. The survivors' leader, Saul, chained Ellie up and subjected her to brutal torture, demanding to know who she was. He was suspicious of the advanced equipment they carried and desperate to find out which faction Ellie belonged to. When Ellie confessed that she came from outside the wall, Saul's reaction was unexpectedly intense. Over the years, Dr. John had told them that there was nothing worth exploring beyond the wall, that the outside world was empty and abandoned. But Saul had always dreamed of what lay beyond. Now, seeing that Ellie had managed to come in from outside, he believed she held the key to escaping the prison they were trapped in. He decided to spare her life, keeping her as their potential ticket to the outside world. Unfortunately, Ellie's teammates weren't as lucky. Though these survivors had no electricity, their nights were filled with brutal, barbaric rituals. Their entertainment included acrobatics, fiery metalwork displays, and horrifyingly, a gruesome feast where humans were roasted and eaten. The captured soldiers, foreseeing their grim fate, cursed the savages relentlessly. No matter how hard they struggled or screamed, their cries were swallowed by the flames. Meanwhile, Ellie was desperately plotting her escape from captivity when a guard brought her a plate of roasted meat. Intending to force her to taste her comrade's flesh, Ellie seized the opportunity. She deliberately lured the guard close, then used sudden violence to force him to unlock her cell. Another guard, distracted by a stolen watch he was examining, didn't notice Ellie sneaking up behind him until she knocked him unconscious on the spot. After dealing with all the chaos, Ellie was ready to escape the prison when a girl from the neighboring cell called out to her. The girl introduced herself as Anna, claiming to be Dr. John's daughter. Ellie felt a spark of hope and immediately planned to take her along. But just then, Saul's girlfriend suddenly charged in. She was clearly a battle-hardened warrior, fierce and relentless. Unfortunately, even with her training, Ellie, being a seasoned Special Forces operative, was a step ahead. In the brutal fight that followed, Saul's girlfriend met her demise at Ellie's hands. By the time Saul arrived at the cell block, Ellie and Anna had already vanished. Enraged, Saul swore he would hunt them down no matter what. Meanwhile, Ellie managed to get in touch with 2 teammates who had escaped earlier, but their situation was grim. They were being relentlessly chased by Saul's men through the night. Compared to them, Ellie was luckier. On the run, Ellie and Anna encountered one of Anna's allies at a train station. He had prepared a train as their getaway vehicle. Ellie quickly relayed the news to her teammates, but Saul's pursuit was closing in fast. Forced to act early, Anna started the train ahead of schedule. Anxious, Ellie jumped off the train to help her teammates escape. Once they were safe, she hurried back on board and fled into the night. Saul, left behind and powerless, could only roar his frustration as they disappeared into the distance. On the train, Anna finally revealed the truth to everyone. She could help Ellie find John, but she didn't want to see her father herself. It turned out that Dr. John was the leader of a powerful faction inside the quarantine zone, and Saul, the leader they had just encountered, was actually John's son. Years ago, Saul had been determined to explore beyond the walls, but John had strongly opposed him, causing a bitter rift between father and son. Anna's mission had been to convince her brother to return and make amends with their father, but instead, Saul captured her. As they talked, the train reached a remote mountain base where Anna led the group into an underground tunnel. The tunnel was stocked with supplies, clearly gathered by someone with a plan. After passing through the tunnel, they emerged into a forest. Suddenly, Anna sensed danger and shouted for Ellie to run, but Ellie chose to stay, believing this was the fastest way to find John. Unfortunately, Anna couldn't escape either. The group was soon captured and taken to John's fortress. When Ellie finally met the former scientist, she didn't waste time and asked directly, was the reason these people had survived until now because of a vaccine John had developed? But John sneered and replied there was no vaccine at all. The reason these people had survived was simply because they were naturally immune, survival of the fittest in its rawest form. Ellie was stunned by John's cold transformation. These were not the words of a compassionate scientist. John angrily explained that once the government decided to build the quarantine walls, the outcome was sealed. He didn't want anyone from outside coming to take away his power. Being a local tyrant inside the zone was a good deal for him. To prevent any information leaks, John decided Ellie must be executed. Ellie thought her fate was sealed, but to her surprise, John's idea of execution was to force her into a medieval-style duel. On paper, their strength was wildly uneven. John expected his men to enjoy watching a show, but Ellie seized her chance. Using her agility, she dodged attacks relentlessly and, during a brief pause, jumped onto the spectator platform to grab a weapon. With quick moves and clever footwork, she managed to turn the tables and defeat her executioner. John flew into a furious rage and immediately ordered his men to shoot Ellie on the spot. But just then, a loud explosion rocked the castle. Ellie's teammates had broken free from their cells. They fought back fiercely against the guards, creating chaos that allowed them to break Ellie free. The group fought their way through the castle and finally regrouped at the main gate. They grabbed several horses and galloped away as fast as they could. John, seething with anger, ordered his entire force to launch a full-scale manhunt to capture the fugitives. On the run, Ellie remembered the stocked-up air raid shelter. When they reached it, they found an unexpected surprise, a brand-new sports car hidden inside a cavernous cave. While Ellie and the team fueled up the car and scavenged for useful supplies, John's men were closing in. As her teammates covered their retreat, one was struck by an arrow and died a heroic death. Fighting back tears, Ellie jumped into the sports car and sped out of the shelter. Thanks to the car's powerful engine, they finally broke free from John's territory. Once she confirmed they were safe, Ellie used a scavenged phone to call her commander Bill, signaling that she had found survivors with natural immunity. But Bill's voice over the comm was heavy with worry. Ellie had only just entered the quarantine zone when things in London spiraled out of control. Under the manipulation of some shadowy figures, the outbreak worsened drastically. Within days, even the Prime Minister's office was overrun. An infected person rampaged through the PM's office, and Bill managed to shoot them down just in time, but not before the blood splattered across the Prime Minister's face. Seeing the chaos, a powerful corporate tycoon ordered everyone to abandon the Prime Minister. Knowing all was lost, the PM raised a gun to himself. With that, the tycoon seized full control. Hearing that Ellie had located someone immune to the virus, the tycoon grew excited and decided to personally lead a mission to extract her from the quarantine zone. Meanwhile, after narrowly escaping John's grasp, Ellie ran into Saul's ambush. Several cars chased after her speeding vehicle, and Saul himself drove a souped-up convertible, closing in fast. Showing off his reckless bravado, Saul even leapt onto Ellie's car roof while she was driving. Ellie fought to keep control, dodging Saul's attacks, only to find the road suddenly blocked by a bus. With no way out, she slammed the accelerator and crashed straight into it. The bus was cut in half, and Saul, still on top, was sliced down like a human steak. Ellie, the sole survivor, finally met up with the corporate tycoon. Anna's blood, the immune survivor's blood, could serve as the perfect sample to develop an antiviral serum. The tycoon smiled broadly and admitted that rushing to create a vaccine wasn't his priority. He believed that only when humanity was pushed to the brink would his serum truly prove its worth. Hearing this, Ellie immediately suspected that the recent outbreak in London was part of a sinister conspiracy orchestrated by these powerful elites. Feeling utterly disillusioned, she refused to leave with the others and instead drove off in the opposite direction. A few days later, Bill traced Ellie using the address on the envelope her mother had given her. He knew she must be at his own home. Seeing the family photo of her mother, Ellie broke down in tears. Then she played the audio recording she had secretly made during the meeting with the tycoon, using her fake eye as a recorder. She was determined that the tycoon's dark scheme would be exposed to the world. In the end, Ellie chose to stay within the quarantine zone. Carrying Saul's severed head, she walked into the survivor camp, where the law of the strongest still ruled, and there, Ellie became the new ruler of the quarantine zone.